They didn't think he could do it. They said he was finished. They said, no way he could ever go back. He's done too many. It'll never happen again. Well, guess what? I decide when we finish. Don't you just hate it when a YouTuber posts the same type of video over and over again because they know it's going to get them views? So here's the Sports Conspiracies Iceberg. Hello there, welcome. There's no need to waste time. We know how this works by now. If you haven't seen some of my other iceberg videos and you want to check them out, these aren't them. We got like 5 of them now. Jesus. Links will be in the description, of course. But it's pretty easy, pretty basic. We're going to be going through sports conspiracy theories from top to bottom, starting with stuff that's more well-known, not too unhinged, and as we go down, get into some more dark, disturbing territories. And this video is much more broad. It's focusing on every sport compared to my other ones, which just focused on one thing each, so we get a little more outside the box. I'm also going to throw a little number at the end of each entry out of 10 as to say how believable I think it is, whether it could really be true. So let's get into it. Make sure you guys read my little disclaimer here. Blue skies. Deflategate. Deflategate was one of the biggest sports scandals of the past 100 years. This may be the only entry on the list that even your grandma has heard of. This was everywhere. But let's give it a rundown. After the 2015 NFL season came to a close, the New England Patriots, who had just won the Super Bowl, came under hot fire. The accusations put the entire Patriots organization at fault, saying they had purposely lowered the air pressure of footballs for the AFC Championship game against the Colts. At the time, it was said 11 out of 12 footballs used by the Patriots that game were underinflated, according to NFL standards. This claim has been challenged in more recent years, though. So, after this, the NFL released a big fat 253-page report in the offseason about Deflategate, which went into a ton of different reasons the balls could have been underinflated. They were talking like temperatures affecting the balls and physics and smart stuff, I don't know. Not for us. But the report did end with the NFL claiming it was probably done on purpose by the Patriots, and moreover, Tom Brady was thought to have been in on the process, netting himself a 4-game suspension. Now, if you're wondering where the conspiracy is, it's the entire thing. Media outlets and fans have run wild with theories about Deflategate. Some think Brady, Kraft, and Belichick were all in on it together, scheming in what was likely some sort of supervillain lair. Another crowd believes that the Colts tampered with the ball after intercepting it and then reported it, thus framing the Patriots. And then there's Mike Kensel, who handled a majority of the Deflategate investigation. Now, Kensel here is a former New York Jets executive, and he's been accused of many people of possibly having it out for the Patriots. With all these different theories, we may never really get to know the truth, which is going to be a theme in this video. But what we can rest assured on is that Tom Brady is a cheater. Super Bowl Blackout. Super Bowl 47 featured the Baltimore Ravens squaring off against the San Francisco 49ers. But the game is remembered in sort of a dark way. Not like dark disturbing, like seriously dark. The lights turned off. Shortly after the third quarter kicked off, power just kind of stopped working. And for 34 minutes, the game was delayed. Now, the conspiracy is just why and when these lights turned off. You see, the power shut off very shortly after Jacoby Jones returned the second half kickoff for a touchdown. This put the Ravens ahead in a close to blowout 28-6 lead. It's not even that people think the 49ers cheated, but rather a lot of people speculate that the NFL purposely shut everything down in hopes to take away the Ravens' momentum and get the game on track to being closer. Now, if this one's true, it worked 100%. The 49ers clawed their way back into things and at least made it interesting, losing by just 3 points. But this closer game 100% brought up ratings way higher than they would have been in a blowout, and they also got the spike from just having a power outage. People are interested, they turn on the channel for that. The outage was chalked up to an abnormality, huge air quotes, that automatically cut power. Yeah, okay. MJ was suspended. Before the 1994 NBA season, Michael Jordan, fresh off 3 straight NBA championships, retired to play baseball. After dominating his sport to a level few ever have, he quit in the middle of his glory. Among multiple reasons, Michael cited his lifelong love to baseball and the connection he had with his late father over the sport as to why he picked it up. However, many NBA fans believe this to be just false. It's an insanely popular theory that David Stern suspended Michael Jordan as a result of his possible gambling addiction. Yeah. This theory entertains the fact that Stern kicked MJ out of the league for a predetermined amount of time, or maybe until he gave up gambling completely, although, today we know that never happened. It's an interesting theory, and it's one of many in both the careers of Michael Jordan and David Stern, and we're going to get to more on both those guys later. Black Sox. Old-timey here. Over 100 years ago, in 1919, the Chicago White Sox lost the World Series. But they were accused of throwing the game in connection with a gambling ring to make a ton of money. All 8 of the accused men were banned for life from the MLB and everything that comes with it. Our conspiracy here is just how involved were each of these 8 men. For example, this is Fred McMullen, who was a backup infielder on the team. Now, Fred didn't take money, wasn't in on any of the deals with the gamblers. However, Fred did overhear his teammates' conversations about this stuff, and he knew what they were up to prior to the series without ever speaking out about it. We all need a Fred in our life. Dude's lips were sealed. And then there's the big question. Did Shoeless Joe Jackson throw the game? He admitted to a grand jury that he accepted $5,000 cash, but he said he never met with the gamblers. However, for over 30 years, until the day he died, Shoeless Joe Jackson swore he played to win and did not throw a single game in the series, citing his amazing stats he had. Multiple players got punished, possibly unfairly, and on the inverse of that, I would imagine at least a few guys got off the hook. Kaepernick blackballed. It was less than a decade ago that Colin Kaepernick was leading the 49ers on deep playoff runs, breaking rushing records and making a name for himself in the NFL. But very quickly, he spirals downwards and out of the league completely. How? Well, we stay unbiased on here, but Colin Kaepernick began kneeling for the national anthem and speaking out loudly about social justice issues a couple years before it was cool to do so. And to think that there's some sort of conspiracy or blackballing going on with Kaepernick isn't a crazy thought at all. You take a look at the list of names of guys who've gotten chances ahead of him, seemingly jumped him in line, it's pretty atrocious. Of course, also, at this point, he's a 35-year-old veteran whose clock has been ticking away with every second. But for a few years there, you really had to wonder if he deserved a shot. NBA Draft Lottery. The envelope. To close out the top layer of the iceberg, we explore the NBA Draft Lottery as a whole, which is one of the most questionably rigged things in all of sports. And the consistency of it is second to none. Seemingly perfect situations, like the Cavs landing LeBron, the Bulls hitting on Derrick Rose, and even the Pelicans getting Anthony Davis. There's infinite of these. These fairy tale stories are just too perfect for a lot of people to believe. But The one I want to especially focus on is the 1985 draft lottery and the numerous conspiracies surrounding it and that damn envelope. This lottery, which was on live television to see, was also the very first NBA draft lottery ever. And in it, the New York Knicks won the rights to the first pick and therefore the selection of college superstar Patrick Ewing. Ewing was one of the biggest and most hyped up prospects ever. And this big player to big market thing is obviously exactly what the NBA would want. But is there any more evidence? Well, yeah, there's tons. As you can see in the video here of the lottery, Stern grabbed the Knicks logo out of a bunch of identical plain cases. Pretty random, but a lot of people actually think that envelope was frozen cold, allowing Stern to know what it felt like while it could still blend in. You can see he does flip over a couple and specifically grabs the Knicks folder from the bottom. But a slightly more visible theory is the bend on the corner of the envelope. You can see when the envelopes are being put in there, the Knicks envelope is sort of just thrown against the glass and bends, allowing it to be told apart from the rest. Tip of the iceberg. 2002 NBA Western Conference Finals. The semifinals between the Lakers and Kings is widely pointed to as one of the most rigged sporting events ever, period, not just basketball. This atrocity of an officiating performance turned a number of fans away from the NBA and sparked the idea of rigging in countless more people's heads. We don't have time to go over everything here. I'll link this video on the game down below because it's a very good video and I don't have one on the topic. But the conspiracies revolve around Game 6 of the series when the Kings had a 3-2 series lead on LA and looked to advance to the finals. In Game 6, the Lakers shot 40 free throws compared to the Kings' 25. And, that's bad, but it's not crazy. How about we zoom into just the fourth quarter totals then? The Kings shot 9 free throws. The Lakers shot 27. I wish I was lying. They shot more free throws in the fourth quarter than the Kings did in the game. And, well, how about we just enjoy a quick montage of some of the terrible calls from the fourth quarter, which these aren't conspiracies, they're just bad calls.
Take it back to Sacramento for Game 7. Leverett called for the offensive foul. That's remaining in the fourth. Horry thought he was fouled. And now Bob Delaney with the whistle on Horry. Coming up short. Game tied at 92. 2:20 remaining in the fourth. O'Neal had it knocked away and he's hit from behind by Thunderbird.
So why was this game seemingly handed to the Lakers on a silver platter? Well, let's play a game. You're the new NBA commissioner. Now, Mr. Commissioner, would we rather have the Lakers in the finals? They got Kobe, Shaq, they're LA, everyone knows them. Or will we rather have the Kings? They got I don't know any Kings players, but, we get the whole California, LA thing. I feel like people are going to relate to... Oh, the Kings are in California too? Okay. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's sort of David versus Goliath, but in this case, Goliath may have had the refs on his side. MJ's dad. Back to more Michael Jordan theories, but we start to get quite a bit darker with this one as we enter a new layer. Now, it's a pretty well-known fact that in July of 1993, Michael Jordan's father went missing and he was found not alive with wounds from a firearm. This is a tragic and horrific event, but people have come up with some even more horrific theories about the truth behind this death. It's been an extremely popular theory that Michael's dad may have been killed as a result of Michael's accumulated gambling debts. A lot of people blame the mob or similar people for the death. This is just a horrible one to think about, but the important thing to note is that there's not really any reason for this theory beyond speculation. The actual important facts we have, which is who the assailants were young men with no ties to mafia or organized gambling or crime. They seemed less like guys executing a hit and more like random junkies who made a really wrong choice. Sonny Liston dives. This right here is one of the most famous sports photos of all time. It shows Muhammad Ali towering over Sonny Liston after defeating him in their second fight. However, the story behind this photo and the knockout blow that led to it may be different than we all think. Sonny Liston is conspiracized to have possibly thrown the match and purposely taken a fall during his fight with Ali. This theory comes from multiple factors that surrounded both of the fighters at the time. Liston himself had ties with organized crime and a number of dangerous people that could have influenced something. Ali, on the other hand, rode with groups of Nation of Islam members that also could have struck fear into Liston. Many people, including the man who wrote Muhammad Ali's biography, believe that Sonny Liston just kind of looked like he was faking it after taking what's now referred to as the Phantom Punch. And as Liston laid there on the ground, Ali famously shouted at him, "Get up and fight, sucker." And this theory puts a whole different meaning on those words. Chris Paul trade. In 2011, a 3-team trade was agreed upon between the Rockets and Lakers owners. The one team owner who didn't agree on it was the Hornets owner, which in 2011 was the NBA. The league owned the team, and they didn't allow the trade that worked out well for all 3 teams. The Hornets wanted to do it. The front office liked it, the players liked it, but the league blocked it. Why? Well, David Stern gave a response that definitely wasn't vague or inducing of any conspiracy theories. Why'd you block the trade, David? Oh, basketball reasons. Yeah, so people were instantly going to run a maths with it, and by now expert theorists project that the NBA was just terrified of the Lakers getting their hands on Kobe and Chris Paul at the same time, and they did everything they could to stop it. It's a trade that would have changed the landscape of the NBA, but was it blocked for darker reasons? (1972) Olympic basketball. Basketball at the 1972 Olympics is yet another contender for the most rigged sporting event ever. And that's not just the American in me talking. This gold medal game, which took place between the Soviet Union and the United States, had some extremely peculiar circumstances. With just seconds on the clock, the Soviets were down 1 point with the ball. They inbounded, failed to score, and time ran out. But no, turns out a timeout was called just in time, and they have to replay the play. Once again, the Soviets inbound and fail to score. The USA rushes the court in victory. But once again, no. Apparently the horn sounded too early, and they get to replay a third time. On this time, the Soviets finally score on an uncontested layup, on which the game was instantly called over, and the Soviets win. It's not hard to see the rigging, so how far does this conspiracy go? Well, this game took place smack dab in the midst of the Cold War. Political implications reigned heavily over any US versus Soviet event, and the Soviets just may have pulled out some extra stops to win basketball. On top of the tough-to-watch game footage, the judges' crew for the game was made up of a majority Russian men. Yet another instance of watching people possibly play with the integrity of sport. Madden Curse. Now, I'm not going to go too far into the Madden Curse. If you want a full-length deep dive on it, I already have a video on it right here. I'll also link that video in the description in case you want to watch it after this one, but in short, the Madden Curse is a yearly phenomenon in which the player to grace the Madden cover is thereby cursed the following year. Often the cover athlete goes through a rough year, injuries, or some other weird career component shortly after covering the game. This case has been seen mainly in players like Peyton Hillis, Gronk, and big-time Antonio Brown. And although it does scarily seem to affect almost every person at least a little bit, a few people have squeaked out unharmed, such as Calvin Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald. I go year for year and see how it affected every single player in my full-length video, but the cover curse is a weird one. It's one of the most well-known and prevalent theories in all of sports, but it just doesn't stop happening. At this point, you have to wonder if it's like a psychological thing, because everybody knows about it when they're accepting the cover these days. A few other sports have had their own cover curse runs, but none near as serious as the Madden franchise. Underwater. Bobby stole the sign. Bobby Thompson of the 1951 Giants hit the shot heard around the world, one of the most famous baseball plays and home runs of all time. This was a walk-off home run to beat the Brooklyn Dodgers and secure the NL pennant for the Giants. It was a huge deal, winning the rivalry, and the game was being broadcasted to millions worldwide. That included a lot of United States Armed Forces listening in while deployed in Korea. It's honestly become a moment of American history, but what if I told you it was about as fake as the Houston Astros ring? The conspiracy behind this one is that Bobby Thompson knew exactly what pitch was coming to him and therefore had a huge advantage on his home run on account of the Giants stealing signs. Now, sign stealing is an art of baseball that dates back basically as old as the sport itself, but many question the ethics and just how far it's okay to go to get another team's signs. It's been said that every team steals signs to some degree, and with that logic, we can go back and discredit countless players through MLB history on account of sign stealing. But the conspiracy behind this one has come after it was discovered that these very Giants teams in the 50s admitted to stealing signs all the time. Eventually, this issue was addressed directly by Bobby Thompson, and when he was asked about it, he admitted that they did steal a lot of signs throughout his career. He did too, but he gave his word that this home run was 100% legit. Then again, though, who wouldn't say that 70 years after the fact? Craig Hodges. If Colin Kaepernick was an activist a few years ahead of his time, then Craig Hodges was a social justice warrior decades before it was relevant. Hodges played a small role on the legendary Chicago Bulls teams of the 90s, playing alongside MJ. He was basically a three-point shooter, and that's mostly it, coming off the bench to score in bunches and winning 3 three-point contests throughout his career. Craig Hodges could shoot with anyone, but in his and a lot of other people's minds, he was completely blackballed by the NBA. After the Bulls won the championship in 1991, they took the yearly visit to the White House. With everyone in fancy suits and tuxes, Craig Hodges arrived to the White House in traditional African clothing. He delivered to the President of the U.S., George Bush, a handwritten letter from himself that expressed his discontent with the treatment of minorities and poor people by the Bush administration. Hodges was not a fan of what was going on in the country at the time, and he strongly opposed the 1991 Gulf War and was the only member of his team who spoke out about it. At practices, he would try to talk to teammates and coaches about it, but no one was with him. They didn't shun him for his views, they just didn't agree, and no one was really as radical about activism as Craig was these days. At one point, he attempted to get Michael Jordan, to stop working with Nike and start his own company that employed minorities. Another time, Craig lobbied 2 NBA superstars, Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan, to try and stage a strike on the 1991 finals to protest the beating of Rodney King by the LAPD. Both superstars never really took the plan seriously. After Hodges was waived by the Bulls in 1992, still a pretty decent player, he was never picked up, never got even a tryout from another team, not even a sniff. 4 years after all that, he sued the NBA for $40 million for blackballing him. That case was dismissed by a federal judge within a couple months. Special balls. This theory pertains to the MLB and their possible use of different types of baseballs depending on the game. Fans have noticed that special baseball events like the Field of Dreams game, the World Series, and other big watched games tend to have a lot more hits, runs, and bombs, making the games more exciting. This theory states that the MLB has multiple sets of balls, including basically a juice set that they break out for these special games to up the scoring. Multiple players on the New York Mets actually discussed this last year, and they believed it was as simple as if you were on national TV, you got the good balls. If not, you get what they called the dead balls that would decrease power and speed. The MLB has admitted that there are two sets of balls in circulation, older, heavier ones and newer, lighter ones, but the idea of them picking and choosing when to use which ball is one that definitely makes sense. NASCAR is fake. NASCAR is a beloved sport by plenty of middle-aged, beer-drinking dads, but sometimes the results start to feel almost too storybook. I'm just going to run through some of the most famous NASCAR race wins of all time that seem a little too perfect for reasons you'll see. By 1984, Richard Petty was well out of his legendary prime, but he still won the 1984 Firecracker 400, perfectly enough on 4th of July. You almost couldn't write it better than that. Unless you added the fact that the president was in attendance for what was, oh, would you look at that, the very first time a president had ever been in attendance. Huh. And then Richard Petty, well, he never won another race after this, over his final 245 starts. But let's see another. As legendary and beautiful as it was, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s win after the death of his father has also sparked theories. It was the very first race back at Daytona since Earnhardt's death, and well, who better to win the race than his boy? And finally, there's Danica Patrick's Daytona 500 pole, which continued a long line of the person with the best story doing very well in the race. Patrick was, and still is, the only female to win the pole position at a Cup race, and she's the perfect face for NASCAR to score some high ratings that year. So obviously some fans and critics alike think that these perfection results aren't just amazing coincidences and are instead planned out beforehand. This would make NASCAR some sort of WWE thing, I guess, like for entertainment, which could work. Like, cars are very intriguing, but we're going to need a lot more crashes and fire if we're going to go and lean into this way. Qatar World Cup. One of the most recent entries on this iceberg, the 2022 Qatar World Cup was full of conspiracies and controversies years before it even began. It really started in December of 2010, because that's when it was announced that Qatar would be hosting. Many high-ranking officials from FIFA and other soccer organizations have been accused of accepting bribes to make sure Qatar got this spot. There's a seething amount of secrecy and possible corruption going on at the top of Qatar's government, and many people think that they were working with or even possibly threatening FIFA to make sure they got it. For some context, Qatar got the rights to host this World Cup by beating out bids from the United States, South Korea, Japan, and Australia. Those are some super giants for little Qatar to come out on top of, but the conspiracies extend to the actual World Cup too, more so the stadiums the games were played in. If you caught any of the World Cup, you saw that these stadiums being used were magnificent. They were feats of architecture and engineering. They looked amazing. But they have some insanely dark stories behind them. You see, these stadiums were built especially for the World Cup, meaning they were put up within the last 12 years since Qatar got the right to host. And Qatar's government worked tirelessly to make sure that these things were done on time and were perfect. And when I say the government worked tirelessly, I of course mean they made migrant workers do all that hard labor. For a country that doesn't keep insanely detailed numbers, it's impossible to know exactly, but it's a rough estimate that Up to 500 or 600 migrant workers died constructing these stadiums, and that doesn't even rival the number in the country alone. Save Ripken's streak. Okay, this one is the craziest thing we've talked about so far, and it's not even that it's like dark or anything, that's why it's on this layer still, but it's just wild. Cal Ripken Jr. has the literal nickname Iron Man, and you shouldn't need much more proof than that to know he was one of the most durable and strong-willed baseball players of all time. The Hall of Famer played 21 seasons, including his bewildering streak of 2,632 games played in a row. Now, this streak is something Ripken's known for. It's his legend, and it was almost snapped for a reason you won't believe. Maybe. This is still just a theory.
A game theory!
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I had to. So here's the story. It's 1997, and Cal Ripken Jr. already has the record for the longest streak. But right now it's only sitting at 2,431 games. Now, on this day, the Orioles had a game, but it was postponed for a minor stadium power outage. A few light bulbs in a certain area just weren't turning on for some reason. This is true. No conspiracy here. These are facts. The game wouldn't end up being played on that day. Not a huge deal, just play it some other day. And Cal Ripken was in the area, presumably ready to play if they decided to, but they didn't. So, where's the conspiracy? Well, a pocket of people believe that the power was intentionally messed with in order to postpone the game. And this may have been done for Ripken's sake. Earlier that day, allegedly, Cal Ripken Jr. went home to find his wife in bed with another man. That man was allegedly Kevin goddamn Costner. So this theory states that Cal Ripken Jr. found his wife cheating with Kevin Costner from Yellowstone, or if you're an intellectual, Draft Day, and he was so distraught from it that he couldn't play baseball that day. But he somehow managed to get the Orioles, the whole team, to stage a deception and postpone the game for him to save his streak. I tried to warn you, it was going to get crazy. And this is the third layer. We just got to the halfway point. But unfortunately for today, that halfway point is going to be the stopping point. I'm going to be splitting this one up into 2 parts, and you just finished part 1. If you're watching this anytime in the future, a week after it was posted, part 2's waiting for you. Go ahead and enjoy it. But if you're watching the first week, no problem. I got more conspiracy content for you. If you click right up here, you'll get my Spurs air conditioning theory video, which is a deep dive into one of the craziest NBA theories of all time. If you got a little conspiracy itch you got to scratch in the back of your brain, that one should do it for you. It's wild. But other than that, I appreciate you guys for watching today. I got some crazy awesome stuff planned up. I'm really excited for it. So just stay tuned, stay right there. You're going to keep getting unique sports content dished out to you.